Footnotes from the Life Application Study Bible. The Pharisees had established 39 categories of actions forbidden on the Sabbath, based on interpretations of God's law and on Jewish custom. Harvesting was one of those forbidden actions. By picking wheat and rubbing it in their hands, the disciples were technically harvesting, according to the Pharisees. Jesus and the disciples were picking grain because they were hungry, not because they wanted to harvest the grain for a profit. They were not working on the Sabbath. The Pharisees, however, could not and did not want to see beyond their law's technicalities. They had no room for compassion, and they were looking for every reason to discredit Jesus and accuse him of wrongdoing. This story is recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 1 through 6. The bread of the presence was replaced every week, and the old loaves were eaten by the priests. The loaves given to David were the old loaves that had just been replaced with fresh ones. Although the priests were the only ones allowed to eat this bread, God did not punish David, because his need for food was more important than the priestly regulations. Jesus was saying, if you condemn me, you must also condemn David, something the religious leaders could never do without causing a great uproar among the people. Jesus was not condoning disobedience to God's law. Instead, he was emphasizing discernment and compassion in enforcing the laws. The 10 Commandments prohibit work on the Sabbath. See Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. That was the letter of the law. But because the purpose of the Sabbath is to rest and to worship God, the priests were allowed to work by performing sacrifices and conducting worship services. This Sabbath work was serving and worshiping God. Jesus always emphasized the intent of the law, the meaning behind the letter. The Pharisees had lost the spirit of the law and were rigidly demanding that the letter, and their interpretation of it, be obeyed. The Pharisees were so concerned about religious rituals that they missed the whole purpose of the temple, to bring people to God. And because Jesus Christ is even greater than the temple, how much more able is he to bring people to God? God is far superior to created instruments of worship. If we become more concerned with the means of worship than with the one we worship, we will miss God even as we think we are worshiping him. Jesus repeated to the Pharisees words the Jewish people had heard time and again throughout their history. The attitude in our hearts towards God comes first. When we truly love him, we will properly obey and observe religious regulations and rituals. By saying he was Lord of the Sabbath, Jesus was claiming to be greater than the law and above the law. To the Pharisees, this was heresy. They did not realize that Jesus, the divine Son of God, had created the Sabbath. The Creator is always greater than his creation. Thus, Jesus had the authority to interpret the correct meaning of the Sabbath and all the laws pertaining to it. He was overruling the religious leaders' traditions and regulations.